Hey there, it's Olivia-Savannah here from Olivia's Catastrophe, and today I'm here to tell you about some books that I forgot that I love. And I saw this video over on Jessie the Reader's channel, and I thought, let me do that as well. Let me just highlight and take a moment to appreciate some books that I really love, but I don't really get to talk about much on this channel because I read them either so long ago or I just forgot that I loved them. And to decide which books to talk about, I went through my spreadsheet of books that I own, because the books that I've read I don't actually have in this country with me. And I looked at some of the books that are the oldest ones on my spreadsheet and remembered the ones that I loved and decided it was high time that I talk about them. So the first book I want to talk about is The Year of Magical Thinking by Joan Didion, and this is Joan Didion's memoir of a year of her life, the year after her husband passed away. And she kind of lives in a year of magical thinking where she believes at any moment he might be able to walk through the door and he's not actually gone, and she struggles to release her grief and fully sink into it and start to move on for a whole year. And that's what this memoir is all about, really. You know, I talk about how much I appreciate reading books on grief. This is a memoir and it's a true story, and I appreciate reading books on grief and I think about them a lot, but this was the book that made me realize, oh yeah, I like reading books on grief. Before I was doing it without putting too much thought into it, but I realized, yes, grief is a topic that fascinates me. Grief is something that we all experience, and it kind of gave me a wake-up call to, yes, grief is something I'm going to be eternally examining my relation to, examining our relationships to, and reading about and processing and thinking about. I just knew grief was it for me as a number one theme. And reading this book was the first time that I decided what I was going to do when someone that I know is grieving. And I think not everybody has like a grief practice or something they do when they know that someone around them is grieving, but it helped me. And she talks about in this book multiple things, but one of the small things she mentioned is how people brought her food when she didn't have the energy to cook for herself. And this book solidified in my mind, yes, if there's someone I know who is grieving, I am going to cook them something. I'm going to bring them a meal, and I've not failed to do that. If someone's grieving, even if they're in a different country, I'll order food for them, or I'll get them something that I know that they like to consume, like a box of tea or just something small to let them know that I'm thinking about them and I want to help. And if somebody is going through the management of grieving, I will always be there to help. If they have to plan a funeral, if they have to go and view the body, if they have to clear out a house, I will always be there to support and do that thing, because I think it's something that I don't mind doing, and I know some people mind doing, but reading this book, it just kind of solidified me, like, I want to be that person there for people who are grieving in life. And it also helped me learn how to be there for myself when I'm grieving in life, because I have lost people in life, and now I have practices that help me process the grief that I'm experiencing and to start that grieving process, because I think every grieving process looks differently. And I'm getting too deep into discussing grief here, but this book really changed my whole perspective and outlook on how I view grief, and therefore I really love it, and I think it's a really important book, and it's one that I do think everyone should read. The next one is My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. I've read a few Grady Hendrix books. I haven't read the ones that people don't seem to like largely, but My Best Friend's Exorcism solidified something in me, and that is the concept of what my horror is. I like psychological horror, and I didn't really realize that until I read this book. Because in this one you've got two friends who are really close friends. It's set in the past, I can't remember the era of time, but it's kind of set whenever Stranger Things is set, and they're really close friends, they're best friends forever, and then one of them becomes possessed. And the way that the spirit that is possessing her manifests its evil is through manipulation and psychological warfare in a way. And so the friendship becomes very toxic very quickly, and it's all very subtle and underhand, the way that the horror creeps out, but it feels psychological. It's really causing her friend to gaslight the fact of, is my friend possessed? Is this my friend? Is this what she really wants to do to me? And that terrified me, and horror books don't usually scare me that much, so it made me think about, like, why is this book terrifying me? And then I understood. So this really kind of made me love it, because it was so underhanded, discreet and quiet, and I often get that in gothic books, but I don't always get it in horror, and that's why I love this book so much. We have A Small Place by Jamaica Kincaid. This is an essay, but it kind of feels like a small little book because it's a long essay, and it was the first Jamaica Kincaid I've read. It has not been my last. I've read several more things by her, but this essay just really, again, I feel like these books are so impactful and I love them because they make me realize something key, and the key thing I realized here is the effect of colonialism post-colonialism effects. And she talks about her island, which I think is Antigua, her Caribbean island, and how ruined it is by what colonization has done to it, and how angry she is and how sad she is every time she visits and sees the destruction, and how it's changed and how it's lost something of itself, the heart of itself, because of colonization, and how there's not been enough reparations done, enough healing, enough recovery. And this book just taught me something essential about colonialism that I hadn't learned in all my years of studying history and talking about this topic. So I found that really important, and it was just full of such burning anger and passion while being so informative, and I loved it. I loved it. Where Europe Begins by Yoko Tawada is a short story collection that's translated, and a lot of it is about mother-daughter relationships and about Japanese culture and being of that culture while not living in Japan, but also while being of that culture in Japan, and the short stories kind of all delve into different things. And I read this in first year of uni for a class, and when I read it, I didn't like it. I read this and I didn't understand it was a short story collection, so I read it as a novel, and I was really confused about how the main character of this novel could be in so many different countries at the same time, having so many different experiences, and none of them seemed to connect to each other. And I was so confused, and then I went into that class and they were discussing it as a short story collection, and it clicked, and I was like, oh my goodness, what did I do? So then I reread it as a short story collection, and I didn't love it yet, but I love it now. I read it and I was like, ooh, that was interesting, but I don't care about it. And I kid you not, throughout those 4 years of university, so many of my poems were inspired by motifs and themes from that short story collection. I could not get it out of my head. I couldn't stop thinking about it, and the way that it talked about relationships and culture and grief, and just the really intersectional depiction of home and how it can change, and heritage and identity. I guess the key thing here is identity. Fascinated me, and since then every single writing piece that I've done kind of delves into the similar themes of identity. But I even have a poem which is called Ariel, and it's inspired by one of Yoko Tawada's short stories in this book, but also by Ariel by Sylvia Plath. So it's a blend of those things, and I just love this short story collection. I don't think I've had a short story collection that I can still recall each and individual story to this day. Just Listen by Sarah Dessen. Now this is a young adult contemporary book, and I read multiple Sarah Dessen books before I got to this one. I have no idea why I read 3 of her books. Oh, I remember, I used to have this rule that it was like 3 strikes and you're out for authors, so I'd read 3 of their books before I stopped reading them. That rule does not apply anymore. I do give authors second chances, but rarely is it a third chance. So I read 2 books by Sarah Dessen I didn't like, and then I read Just Listen, and ooh, it hurt me. It hurt me a lot. It is about a middle child. I am a middle child. It is about a middle child who has insomnia. Sounds familiar. And it's about the ways in which she doesn't feel listened to and she feels overlooked. And I think at that time period of my life as a teenager, reading it, I really related to this main character in a way that struck me. And I think there's very few times in my life where I've read a book and I felt like, wow, this is me. And while that obviously doesn't apply anymore because I've changed and I'm no longer a teenager and I no longer feel that way, at that time period I really loved this book because it captured me very well. The Hour of the Star by Clarice Lispector. This is a book that I love. I love it so much. It's a classic. It's a very short classic. I love it so much, and I think it's genius, and I think it's perfection, and I don't talk about it nearly as much as I should have done or should do. This is translated, and it's about a young woman, I think she's in Brazil, and she is just trying to be happy. All she wants to be is happy, but she's poor and she's in the slums, and she is so poor and unhappy that she doesn't even get to tell her own narrative. This is all told from the perspective of a rich businessman who comes across her in the slum, and it's from his voice, and his voice is dominating the whole narrative. And while you're getting to hear about the misfortunes of this girl who is poor, who is lower class, who is sad and striving to be happy, who wants to find love, who is just trying to be a woman in a culture that doesn't seem to be kind of giving her the opportunities that she needs. The real tragedy is in the fact that she doesn't even get to tell her own story. And I think it was a genius use of narrative and perspective, because even the narrative itself feels like oppression. Even the narrative itself is pushing her down and pushing her away from the limelight that she just really just wants to touch, even for a moment. And this book kind of emotionally ruined me. And I remember studying this one and thinking about it in terms of like culture, in terms of feminism, in terms of perceptions of beauty and perceptions of happiness. And I wrote this essay that to this day I still think is one of the best essays I've written in uni. It was studying and comparing Frankenstein and The Hour of the Star and its perspectives of identity. So that was also around the first time that I read Frankenstein, and I talk about Frankenstein all the time so you all know how much I love it, but just as much as I love Frankenstein is how much I love this book, and I think they are both masters in discussing the topic of identity. Heartless by Marissa Meyer. So this is Marissa Meyer's retelling of Alice in Wonderland, and it's not as well known as the Lunar Chronicles and her other books seem to be, and people do know about it, but it almost flew under the radar there. And I really love this book because it's the only Alice in Wonderland retelling that I love so far. I hate the story of Alice in Wonderland. It's a classic I just could not get on board with. It was too whimsical, it was too weird, it was too nonsensical, and it just didn't seem to go anywhere. I didn't seem to get anything out of reading that book, and so I didn't like it. And since then I've been trying to read Alice in Wonderland retellings and I haven't clicked with a single one of them, and I think it does come down to the source material. And yet this book, Heartless, is the only one that seems to have pierced that and pushed past it and made me actually like an Alice in Wonderland adjacent story. It does the chaos of the nonsensicality and whimsicality of Alice in Wonderland well, but it introduces a jokester character where even though he seems to be as mad as everybody is in this world, there is something about him that just made incredible sense to me, and I understood him and I understood the relationship that they were forming, and I don't know, I just went on this spiral of a story and I was here for it, and that's why I love this book, because it made me love a classic that I hate, and that takes talent and skill. Lady Audley's Secret by Mary Elizabeth Braddon. Now, I did a module on crime fiction because I love classic crime fiction, even though I don't particularly love contemporary crime fiction that much, and Lady Audley's Secret was one we had to read, and when I read it I was absolutely fascinated. Now, this one is about a woman who's a manipulation queen, and I love it. I love manipulation queens. If you watch my favourite characters of all time video, you can see that with Queen Lavanna, but I just didn't expect a classic book to give me a woman who was so villainous in nature, and so as soon as I met her I was like, wow, this is the one. And it had a predictable mystery to it because of the way that this story is presented in contemporary times kind of gives the game away, and yet I was still very much riveted and reading and flying through this book because I wanted to understand the ways in which she'd been able to pull off what she pulls off in this book, and the way in which this whole book unravels, and like how the storyline got to the ending point, even though you can see where the ending point is from the beginning. And so I had a very good time reading this book. It's quite a long one, but I was captivated by this small house in this area that is covered by nature and what they ended up doing there. It absolutely fascinated me, and I think it's one of those classics that more people need to read because it's actually very, very good. The Nowhere Girls by Amy Reed. Oh boy, this is a book that I really love. It's a young adult contemporary, and I can't remember if it's 4 or 3 exactly, but you get multiple points of views, and one of them is a fat girl, one of them is a queer girl, one of them is a Christian, and I think there is one more. It's about these girls who feel like they don't belong anywhere, they don't fit in, and they take a vow of celibacy in this area because the boys are horrible and they seem to just not have any rights for the girls in their life. They seem to just be dominating them, and the girls decide to form a group called the Nowhere Girls and stand up for their rights and take a vow of celibacy that is going to force the boys to pay attention to their behaviour and change something. And so this book is full of feminist vibes, and I think it does them really well. All of these girls are really, really angry. Really angry and fed up of the way that they've been treated, especially because in this town one of the girls who was raped kind of was forced to move away because nobody seemed to be caring about the fact that she was raped and taking the culture, the rape culture in the town seriously. And so I think this young adult contemporary talks about these tough subjects in a really important way and does all of the feminist storyline incredibly well, like top tier 5 stars. And yet at the same time, the reason why I love this book is because of all of that, but it's equally also because this was one of the first times that I read a young adult contemporary book where it was about queerness and Christianity going hand in hand. It was quite monumental to me to read that because I've always been a Christian who's an ally to the queer community, and that's a big part of who I am and what I believe is right and acceptable, and I guess that's a human decency, but I don't think all Christians see it that way, as we know. And so being a Christian ally, I didn't realise until I read this book how painful it was for me to see Christianity, which is a big part of my life, but also queerness and like the queer community, is incredibly separate in books. I never read a book where Christianity and queerness could be in the same book and for it to have positivity in it, like a positive depiction of that. I'd never seen it. I'd never seen it until I read that book as a, I would say an older end teenager. I guess I was around 18, and I really got broken by this book because I didn't realize that was something that I needed and I wanted and I found very important to see. And I'm not saying that it's not important for all of those books that talk about queer people's experiences with Christianity, where they were rife and they were bad and they were detrimental to them living their lives authentically and their identity as who they are. I don't think that means we don't need those books, but I don't think I noticed how much I needed books where there was queer and Christian faith healing happening or acceptance happening as well. And that's why in every single book that's not poetry, that's like novel length, that I've written since, there's always been queerness and Christianity coming together in a way where it can blend and there be a like peaceful, happy way. And so that's definitely down to the Nowhere Girls, and that was really impactful to me in that regard. And the last book I want to talk about here is The Water Cure by Sophie Mackintosh. This is a book that I really randomly read because a friend from uni wanted to go to this signing for this author who was an alumni of Warwick, which was the university I went to, and I said sure. And even though nowadays when I go to signings, if it's not a book that I've read or I just am attending with a friend, I don't typically just buy the book to get it signed. But for some reason I decided to buy the book and get it signed, and then I was like, okay, I have it, I gotta read it. And I read it and I was like, wow, this is good. It's weird and it's strange, and I often have two reactions to strange books. I love them or I don't like them, and this was a weird that I really liked. It's about this family of women and these sisters who go to an island, and they live on this island and they've been disconnected from humanity for years. They have not come across a boy before. They don't know anything about the outside world. All they know is the life that they've been raised to live on this island. And they have a very close relationship. They're isolated. All they have is each other. So their relationship is very entangled and embroiled when these three men show up on their island, and they've never come across men before. And it's about what happens. And it's absolutely fascinating. It's kind of dark and it's kind of twisted, and I really liked it. You get to see from these three sisters' perspectives, and I don't know how to describe this book, but it really affected me so much that for the first time I was underlining in my book. I do not underline or annotate in books typically that aren't poetry collections. It's only poetry that gets that from me. And now, since then, I've become a bit more relaxed and I can underline things in books, but it's a very rare occurrence and I so rarely do it. But this one had a whole paragraph that got right underlined because the writing is just that good and her concept was just that good. And so that's one of the books that stayed with me because it broke all of my rules or all the ways that I thought I felt about strange and weird books. And there you have it. Those are top 10 books that I forgot that I loved as much as I do, and I felt like I needed to talk about them again. Please let me know in the comment box down below, is there a book that you love that you kind of forget that you love or you don't talk about it as much with other people? I'd love to hear about that book. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, hit that subscribe button if you want to see more, and don't forget to hit that notification bell to be updated every time I have a new video. And you know what they say, onwards and upwards. Excelsior!